see Mr. Nielsen out there?
Yeah, I don't have nothing yet, Nikki, remember?
Jennifer,
Huh?
did you see Mr. Nielsen back there?
It should start.
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. Yeah, no, he's not here.
Oh, that's on the seal
Yep,
over
here
there.
we go.
So here's technical zoning committees.
Got it.
Let me see. I said
We got it.
just organizing myself here.
There's a lot of papers today.
Oh, yeah. I asked Diane if she's got enough papers yet in her house.
Problem is, I'm not sure what I should save, what I shouldn't
Oh, I
save, and,
know.
you know, it's like, well, I've had a double of something, got shredded, you know, certain things.
Oh, that's for finance. And I knew you probably had these, but I just left the voicemail in
Oh,
case.
no, that's okay.
Because I was like, Nicole always says hard copies, but she didn't have it on this one.
I think Friday was a very long day.
I'm calling Big Ray after, try to call him. See if he's running late or if something happened.
How's it going, Diane?
Good,
That's good.
can't complain.
Well, I know Joe's not gonna listen to you.
No, he doesn't. No, you got that right. Not worth me even wasting my time.
Just wondered, on your way to the meeting?
Directory?
Yeah, maybe. I got the directory right here. Let's see if he's got it.
Because at one point it was wrong.
Oh, here it is. I was looking for this before. I was like, how come Nicole didn't put the line for 25? I was trying to look at it on my tablet.
February, you'll see a line.
Yeah, but I was looking at it on my tablet, and you scanned them in this way. So every time I went like this, it went like, I'm like, oh, forget it, I'll just have to look at the hard copy. Love auto rotate, but hate it too. Did you watch the Super Bowl at all?
Oh, yeah, the whole thing.
Oh, no, I didn't watch a thing.
No, I watched it. I just kept hoping, okay, they're gonna do a Tom Brady move,
Oh,
you
it's
know,
on its
and
way.
get caught up and pass and win and, you know, but I
Okay.
wanted Philly to win, but,
So we could
you know,
start.
Yeah.
I mean, it really didn't matter since
Right.
it's not the
Sure.
Browns, you know,
Right,
so
and
it's
Johnny
like,
said it's not really
And
that
just make it
exciting, because
just
both teams have
Let
won
him
how
know
many
he's gonna be a
times
few minutes late.
already,
That way we
so,
won't make a
Right.
motion to excuse him or anything. That's what I didn't wanna do.
so I was just like,
yeah.
I had
This
ID
is
on,
what
I was
I was
watching
looking
Where they are
Evil Lives
recording.
Here.
Well, you always wanna see the
So,
commercials,
whenever
that's the
you're ready
best
to
part,
start.
you know, but
Brian,
even those
yeah,
weren't as
right
good
now
as
it's
normal.
Thank you.
No?
Well, good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, and this is the Village of Walton Hills Finance Committee meeting. And at this time, we are going to call this meeting to order. Our first item of business would be a roll call.
Councilman Nielsen, Councilwoman Kanzoni,
Here.
Councilwoman Allen.
Here,
Councilman Spitznagel.
Here,
Councilman Whedon.
Present. And just want to reflect for the record that Councilman Nelson is en route. He's on his way. We're also joined tonight by our mayor, Mayor Don Colgraf, as well as our finance team and one guest, Mr. Matt Stuzinski, who is actually the first person on our agenda tonight to bring a summary, a note summary. And just for the viewing public, I'll just kind of go over the items that we have on our agenda. It might look like it's a lot, but I think we can get through this. There will be a general finance update, including the January finance report. We'll talk about 2024 capital reimbursements, 2025 capital projects, applications, prioritizing capital projects, and then other business, a finance department update. And then we will hopefully be done for sure by 7 o'clock p.m. That's basically what we have on our agenda for tonight. So at this time, we would welcome Mr. Matt Stuzinski to come to the microphone and just provide us a note summary from our 2024 notes.
Mr. Chairman? Matt, if you wanted to stay there, we do have a stand, a mic stand we can put there. If you wanted to sit, if it makes it easier.
I can move that over easily.
Okay.
2 new knees?
There
There you
you
stand, right? So I know Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm would disagree with me, but Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year.
Last year in November, the village issued $1,820,000 worth of 1-year bond anticipation notes. That was a renewal of notes that were outstanding that was issued in 2023. The village paid down $100,000 from the prior year when they had issued those notes in November. That note issue closed in mid-November, and those notes come due November 13th, 2025. That's $1,820,000. That comes due November 13th, 2025. The village issued those notes at a reoffer yield to the investor at 3.5%, 3.50%, and had about $20,000 in cost of issuance. So net cost to the village is about $86,000 in cost and interest expense for that note when it was issued. A reminder, the village did utilize the Ohio Market Access Program, which is the Treasurer of State's credit enhancement program. We use that program as it provides investors the confidence that if for whatever reason the village does not pay its interest, the state steps in and will buy those notes and pay off the interest that's due. That's generally not a risk for any community in Ohio. However, investors find a lot of comfort in it, especially when a smaller village, which doesn't have an outstanding bond rating, comes to market. So the program was designed to help those communities that don't access the market with any frequency or are smaller in nature. In some cases, they're troubled in nature. That's not the case here, but it helps those type of issuers access the credit market. And there's a cost to that, but we look to see whether or not that cost justifies the benefit. And while the cost was likely in the range of, let's say, $3,000 to $4,000, that likely saved us at least 3 to 4 times that in terms of interest expense savings. So while we issued the notes at 3.50% reoffer yield, without that OMAP program, we might be at a 3.90 or a 4% interest rate for an investor to get comfortable with a village that doesn't have an outstanding bond rating. I mean, the good news is that you don't have an outstanding bond rating because you don't have a debt, any bonded debt, so that's all good news. The buyers of that note were 3 firms, one being a company investor called Cypress Funds. They typically buy for banks throughout the country. R.W. Baird, which is a broker-dealer, likely had a small investor about $100,000 worth of the note. And Red Tree Investments purchased a little over $1 million, if I'm not mistaken. Red Tree typically buys for municipalities and counties. So it was interesting to see them participate in the sale, as there must have been some counties that they represent or cities that they represent in Ohio who purchased the note on behalf of those communities. So that was all good. It's nice to have more than one buyer, because when we come back for a renewal of the note in 2025, at least there's more participants to scour the market to make sure and see if they stay involved in the transaction next year. So that's a quick recap of the note. We'll look to, again, roll those notes this coming 2005, November 2025, try to pay down more of those notes if we can. And the reason I say that, some of the notes that we are still continuing to pay down, about half of that amount, $1,820,000, are notes that were issued back in 2015 and 16. You know, some of it was for road improvements, and as we've talked about a number of times, roads in Northeast Ohio do not last as long as we hope, right? And when you start getting into road improvements that you've issued debt for that are 8, 9, 10 years in duration, you're starting to really stretch and issue debt for roads that may already be in need of additional repair. So it would be healthy, in my mind, to try to accelerate the repayment of these notes that are outstanding, and to particularly pay off those that were issued in 2015 and 16. The ones that were issued in 20 and 21 were Dunham Road, and I can't remember the other one, but it would be nice to start to get rid of those from 15 and 16, and that's about $900,000 of the total outstanding. So we'd look to do that. I'm not saying you have to do that all in 1 year. Of course, we are looking to have some, we'll call it upside benefit coming out of the developments over on the Northfield intersection, and hopefully that'll provide some additional resources to start to pay down this debt. I know you have a lot of competing interest in those resources, but I would tell you that it's time to try to address paying down these notes from 2015 and 16 if the village has the wherewithal to do that. With that, I'll stop and see if there's any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stuzinski?
Councilman Reed.
Al?
Thank you. Matt, what are the other items that we would be able to issue debt for?
So the state statute says anything that has a useful life of 5 years.
Okay.
So any building improvements, infrastructure improvements, utility improvements, those are all eligible as long as it has a useful life of 5 years.
So as an example, like the roof that we had to
Most
put
certainly.
on? Okay.
Most certainly. Building improvements all typically qualify for, as long as it has a 5-year useful life, and typically has a useful life according to the state statute of anywhere between 25 and 30 years.
Okay.
And where we do issue debt, that's typically where I make recommendations to issue debt for those type of projects, as they have a long useful life. They may have an intergenerational benefit, and you take your time to pay those back. Where I try to lean away from is road improvements, and only in as much as we'd like to believe they're gonna last, they generally don't.
Right.
In terms of the useful life. State statute says road paving is gonna last 10 years. That might be the case in Cincinnati, okay, which the state statute has to contemplate, that it applies not only to Cleveland area, but to Cincinnati. It might be the case. That's certainly not the case up here in Northeast Ohio. I mean, we're lucky if we get concrete to last 10 years.
And all of the debt that we have issued now is road programs?
Traffic signalization, some building improvements. I think 2016 was building improvements.
Okay.
But most, everything else was road improvements.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Stuzinski? Well, I just have a comment. Well, any other questions?
No,
Any questions online, any of our online viewers? Well, thank you very much. It's very enlightening just in the short few minutes that you're here with us to get your perspective, especially as it relates to road debt in general, but road debt and paying, taking a look at accelerating, payments on outstanding debt. I did have one question related to the expenses, and we were presented with this sheet and as a summary. We were kind of looking at what is all of this.
Okay.
So thank you for coming to enlighten us. So you talk about the OMAC expense, which is very reasonable. But then there's a OMAP, O-M-A-P
Okay.
rating. Are those two
Completely different.
connected?
Yeah, they're completely different, but the OMAC, I'll start there, is the Ohio Municipal Advisory Council report. Broker-dealers, villages, cities, they're all members of OMAC, the Ohio Municipal Advisory Council. Think of it as a repository of debt information for municipalities, counties, school districts throughout Ohio, okay? When these notes are sold to investors, they have very little information, in fact, that's available in the public domain, other than the audit that's currently posted on the state auditor's website, any financial information that may be available on the village's website. But these investors, and this goes back 30-plus years, this repository was formed to help inform investors and provide them with what we'll call a very limited offering document. It's not like an official statement, which is a very robust prospectus document. You buy a stock or you buy an investment, you get 30, 40, 50, 60 pages of disclosure. An OMAC report might be 6 pages that shows the tax rate, the delinquency rate, the general fund balances, income tax collections, indirect debt limits, direct debt limits. It gives a real, we'll call it short, but we'll call it, I don't want to use the word comprehensive. It's short but valuable recap to an investor of what the village's financials look like. And they use that in tandem with whatever might be out in the public domain to make a decision as to whether or not they want to purchase the debt. Now, each of these companies that I mentioned, they have their requirement, likely, to do their own due diligence internally, but they use that OMAC report as a starting point to compare various Ohio issuers against one another. All right, so it's, we can get you a simple copy of that. That typically is sent to an investor, normally 6 to 7 to 8 days before the actual sale of the debt, to get them comfortable, one, that there's a sale coming, and two, this is the information that's available through the Ohio Municipal Advisory Council, and they try to make this very consistent against for issuers throughout Ohio. Now, that's been around a long time. I mean, I don't know when OMAC was started, but I've been in the business 40-plus years, and it was there before I started, and probably likely 20 years before that. The OMAP program was a program created by the State Treasurer's Office called the Ohio Market Access Program. And again, that is, within the last 15 years or so, a program that was created to help small issuers or troubled issuers access the capital markets. So if you were, as an example, and I'll just use a couple, if you were a struggling community that didn't have an outstanding rating or had a history of some type of, we'll just say you're coming out of fiscal emergency, or your fund balances, or whatever, there was, we'll call it any type of challenges in terms of your profile to an investor, this program, when you apply for it and you are deemed eligible for it, provides the investment community the confidence that if there's any failure to renew the debt or pay the debt, the state will step in as a credit enhancement. You've heard of bond insurance. This is almost like note insurance to an investor. And we pay a fee for that, but again, the fee, we only use that program if we know that the fee we're paying is rationalized by the benefit we receive. And we, more often than not, like we don't pursue it unless we know that it's necessary to get the best pricing. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Mr. Chair, the state pays the interest, is that what you said? The state pays the interest on the note, or they pay the note?
They'll buy the note, and they'll pay the investor who owned the note to make sure that they can get out of owning the note. So they'll pay and they'll buy the note into their portfolio and pay the old investor off. So that investor has confidence that there's certainty that when these notes come due, they're not left holding the bag. The state will step in and buy the note, pay off the interest on the note. So it provides tremendous comfort. And people use it not only, so the program again was crafted to help difficult issuances, but everyone now uses the program as basically an arbitrage play. They determine whether or not they're better off going to market with or without the OMAP program, and if it saves them 10 basis points, they do it. And it could be somebody as a AA rated community like Lake County or a city of Strongsville, which is a AAA. If it makes sense, they'll use the program. It wasn't designed for that, but it's morphed or evolved into basically an interest rate play through the OMAP program. And the OMAP program, to their credit, they like having a mix of weak and strong credits in the program. It's just not the weakest credits in Ohio using the program. So they do like the fact, and Standard & Poor's, who rates the program, likes the fact that there's a healthy mix of weaker credits and stronger credits in the program. So we continue to access that. There's a point at which this doesn't make sense, all right? And there's a point for that matter, at which it doesn't make sense to roll this note. And with the point that we start having to pay $20,000 in fees for a $400,000 note, all right, it may make sense to just pay it off in its entirety. Or pay it off in the entirety and issue notes for a new program that we come to market with because it's necessary at that point in time. But this is, in my mind, first in, first out. This is FIFO accounting, right? We're trying to pay off those old notes that were issued in 15 and 16. And if there's a point in time that, even if we paid $400,000 to pay off an old note, we came back with $400,000 for a new project, there's some sensibility around that. Okay?
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, again, we certainly thank you
Sure.
for your time tonight and
Sure.
sharing. I just have one final question. I know it's only February 11th.
Yeah.
And we typically, of course, our issuance, we start in October.
September. Yeah.
September, October. And this year's yield, the 3.5% yield, is lower than what, some of the interest is paying on some of the accounts for the village. You have a crystal ball. Of course, I was going to ask you questions
Of course,
like that.
yeah.
But it's only February. Any crystal ball on what the remainder of 2025 may look like?
So I work from home. That's where my office is. And I have Bloomberg on 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So I hear all these talking heads all day long speculating about interest rate and the impact of tariffs and the impact of the Fed. And everyone's wrong. I mean, if I stand here today and give you an opinion, I'm going to be wrong, okay? Most certainly, there is expectation that the Fed's going to lower rates in 2025. But tomorrow morning, CPI comes out at I think at 8:30 or thereabouts, and that's going to move the market again to suggest that inflation is not going away, and the Fed doesn't have a lot of motivation to lower rates. But I think they're going to stand pat. I don't think you're going to see a lot of interest rate movement on the short end where we price these notes over the course of 2025. I think 6, 7, 8 months from now, I'll be back before council and I'm going to say rates are just about where we were in November of last year. And that's not a bad thing. Predictability about this interest rate environment is not necessarily a bad thing, even if they stay a little bit high. Historically, we're still not at a high interest rate, borrowing at 3.5%. That's not if you went back in time, we got this weird sense of low by way of COVID, and that's not where the market has historically been. 3.5 is not unreasonable. So I don't expect it to move all that much between now and the fall. Maybe a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but I don't expect it to move all that much. So when we come back later this year, I hope to be accurate and correct that it's about the same. And we'll be able to pay down by way of progress in the payroll of new employers, that we'll be able to pay down more in 2025. And I know that you've been diligent with regard to your capital improvement dollars, and hopefully some things come in under budget, and we'll be able to apply some more resources to pay down the notes. I hope that helps. That's not a great answer, but I don't want to be called out because I suggest something one way or another by dramatically different. I just don't expect that to be the case. Okay?
Look forward to your fall forecast, or later in the year.
And
forecast.
of course, if something comes up over the
Whatever
course
that
of the
is,
year,
yeah, later in the year.
delighted to come back to village council and chat about other capital projects that the village may want to entertain. Okay? But good luck with new employers
You're right.
and their payroll. Let's hope they get in soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Spitznagle.
I'd like to recognize that Councilman Nielsen arrived about 15 minutes ago. It's now 6:27.
Thank you, Mr. Spitznagle. Mr. Nielsen is marked as present for this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, our next,
No, you have to stay the whole night. As he laughs at me.
Could be some good stuff.
okay, our next item on the agenda is the January finance report. And I just want to say before Nicole comes to share with us just how appreciative we all are of the work that the finance office does, the documents that are being produced, sharing with us very transparent information. However, there's a lot of pages. So we were just going to ask, and it's only February, so it's just the beginning of the year, but we are going to ask Nicole if she could walk us through her reports, and especially focus on perhaps large, and I did not have a conversation with you ahead, but focus on some of the larger items, whether it be revenue or expenditures that are in our reports.
Okay, we can start with the first page of the finance update.
And Nicole, if you could, can you please, a little bit louder?
So,
Your Cavalier's voice.
so we can start with the first page, which kind of gives a summary of our RETA collections plus the expenses and revenues through January. January expenditures plus transfers to other accounts for the general fund exceeded revenues by $655,731.01. Overall expenditures and transfers exceeded revenues by $204,295.68. So I try to give a summary each month of the various items the village received as far as RETA collections, which increased this year in January 73.2%, and the interest income for January, which was $10,171 this year versus $2,602 last year. So the first page is basically a summary and the contents to follow. The next page would be the cash balances and outstanding obligations. These would be the balances in all of our accounts, our Star Ohio, our checking, tax, and mayor's court. Below that, you'll see the loans we have through OPWC, our notes, and any leases we may have, which currently is 2 international trucks. And that's a summary for that. The next page, I recently created just to show the RETA revenue over the past few years since we've started with RETA in 2023, and sort of the cyclical ups and downs that you see. If you'll notice, this year in January, we were significantly higher than 2024, increasing about 73.2%. In addition, on that page, there is also the Star Ohio interest received, which is also significantly higher than last year.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Spitznagle.
for Nicole, concerning the 561,000 RETA income for January, which is significantly more than 2024 of 324,000. Do you have any idea of, is that an anomaly, or is that an indication of more revenue that is coming in, going to be coming in on a consistent basis?
I would say it's not necessarily indicative of what's to come. It is when companies are paying. There may be a company that paid $100,000 this January, but did not pay that last January.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor Colas.
Was any of that, Nikki, did we get any substantial amount of the construction from the employees at the two buildings? Or
I would have to look into that.
maybe there was some there, you know what I mean, because
Right.
Rita did collect
Yeah,
that.
let me come back with that answer.
That's fine, I just was thinking that might be one of those things.
Moving on, then, we have our cash summary by fund report, which is the balances in all of our funds. It shows the beginning balance plus the revenues minus the expenditures and provides an ending balance. And all of these reports are printed out from UAN, which is really actually very nice. The next report is a comparison of 3 years, 2023, 2024, 2025, all of the funds, revenue and expenses by fund, and that is about 17 pages long.
That's all?
So I have one question for clarity. So the 2025, 24, and 23 comparison is for the month of January of each of those years? Is that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The next report after that would be, I believe, the revenue status, and that shows our budget versus what revenue we have received as of January 31st. And the final report would be the appropriation status, which again would show our final appropriation versus what we have spent as of January.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Spitznagle.
Couple things to think about with this as I was reviewing this. We passed a 2025 budget with a deficit of just slightly over $285,000. We did receive from the mayor through Joe Gelati, the County Road Preventative Maintenance Reimbursement Program grant. And that's going to pay $75,000, but that's towards material costs, not labor. And that labor is not included in our capital improvements. It's not included in the budget yet. So that's something to think about for forward thinking here. And also, I'm just going to throw it out, this is something for the Infrastructure Committee to go through and make a recommendation to council. I was speaking with Mr. Kalman about our road program, and Fern and Logan is almost impassable or undoable with our plows. And the cost of that, according to Mr. Gelati's road program analysis, is $92,000. So that's something that, just off the top here, that the Infrastructure Committee will take a look at and make a recommendation to council as to the need to get that, to put that stuff in the budget. And then I'm just wondering, if Mr. Gelati gave us any information as to what the labor cost would probably be with this road program that we got the grant for.
Mr. Spitznagle, can you hold that question till we?
We got it on the?
Yes, we have it. That's.
Okay, very good, thank you.
That is, talking about item 3. C or D.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I put the
You can
cart
come back.
before the horse.
You're on the
Thank
right,
you.
you're on the right track.
All right, sir, thank you.
Any questions for Nicole regarding, any other questions for Nicole regarding the finance update that she has presented? Of course, as we said, it's only, this is the January report, some first of the year transfers and things like that. Of course, probably perhaps next month, we may be able to dig in a little further, but are there any questions regarding this report?
Mr. Chair, Nicole, I do. I couldn't find in my notes anywhere on your page 5, the 1,000-490, that whole little group there. What was that department
Which report are you on?
on page 5 of 18?
And you're looking at 1,490?
Yes, that whole group. What department was that?
Oh, that is Rob, is that, no, that's not Rob's. That, I believe. Is that, yeah, I think that's the engineer's wages.
Engineer?
Mhm.
Okay. I couldn't find it anywhere, I'm sorry.
Oh, 490, that is, community planning and zoning is above that. Below that would be then the engineer.
Okay. And my other question is on the overtime already for 1,110, 190? That's 1 month and 1 month are overtime for both those departments already?
Yes.
Okay.
Which line item is that, please?
On page 2,
Page
1,000,
That
110?
Page 2 of 18?
Yes. That seemed to be excessive for 1 month already for both departments.
What was the number, where are we at?
The overtime.
So that's police personnel overtime. The other one is for dispatch, right?
Right,
Because
but-
we were down,
I didn't know we were shorthanded anybody right
Yeah.
now already, just.
yeah, well, that's why he was trying to hire two prior to. Officer Davis.
Dispatchers?
Dispatchers also, that, the first one, that's police.
Yeah, because we have one on vacation.
Well, we had two that
Excuse me,
retired.
Councilwoman Allen.
Yes.
This side of the room can't hear the conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was telling Councilwoman Canzoni, I believe that was because we were down 2 officers from retiring for the police personnel. But I don't know, Nicole, can you confirm that?
I cannot, I would speak to the chief on that, but I do believe this was 3 pays this month. There was a pay at the beginning of January, which was the last 2 weeks of December, and then there were 2 additional, so it's a little bit higher for January.
So with any pay adjustments that were made for late 2024 increases, would that also be impacted here?
Yes. Well, for 2025, it would increase, yes.
Well, you said there may have been 3 pay periods,
There were 3 pay
3.
periods.
pay checks issued in January,
Mm-hmm,
but some of that may have reflected 2024
correct.
back pay or anything like that? Could that be impacted here?
I believe the back pay was 2023, so this would just be the last 2 weeks of 2024, and then January pays.
Well, when I say back pay, I mean retro, the adjustments that were agreed to, that were retro to January, but, well, when were those paid? Were those paid in 2024? Or
Correct.
they were, okay, they received, okay, so that's not here.
No.
That
I
answers
was
my
only questioning the overtime because now I'm concerned for February. We're gonna be in the same situation for this month to have that also added to our budget. And possibly March.
We'll take a look at
Yeah.
that and discuss that with the chief and see that. I have a feeling something's just, he might have something else in that line.
Okay.
Let us
Okay,
Thank you.
do that. Wouldn't you agree, Nikki?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
okay, that's all I was asking about.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
It's a good point.
Well, thank you for that. Our next item I did have an opportunity to talk with Nicole last week a little bit, and about 2024 capital reimbursement, some which do show up in this report already. But if she could just kind of walk us through the anticipated reimbursements from 2024 that will be included come in as revenue for 2025, especially in the area of the capital reimbursements.
So we had a few items that carried over into 2025 for capital reimbursements. The first of which we received was Alexander Storm Sewer in the amount of $24,155.75. An additional amount received was for the 2024 Cuyahoga County Road Maintenance Project, and that came in the amount of $67,387.50. Currently, we are still due a reimbursement for Andrus Drive of $73,428.30. And our sanitary sewer, that is paid out as the project progresses. Currently, the amount due to us is $1,412.26.
Okay. So I do believe I saw the 67,000 already.
Correct.
That's reflected in, but I did not see the 24 in this report. Is it in here somewhere?
That, I believe, is in the capital. I can look into that.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
And for those who can add as fast as you reported, do you have a total of those anticipated dollars? Either have already been added to the treasury or anticipated?
That's,
Unless someone else was, the 24, the 24 plus,
Mhm.
the 67 plus the 73 and the 1,000, unless Mr. Spitznagel was calculating as we were talking.
No.
that is going to be about 163, if I'm adding correctly. The sanitary sewer, we're expected to spend $28,000 and $28,038. That should be received this year if it goes, if all of those items are done, but I didn't want to include that yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
So
Mr.
you're basically
Spitznagel.
at $160,000.
Mhm.
I'm
Where-
sorry, Mr.
Oh, no, that's okay. Where did you see the $60-some-thousand entry?
I know, I saw it, I marked it, I highlighted it.
I believe it's in the motor vehicle.
Oh, it's in motor vehicle, okay.
Mhm.
I'm looking in the capital improvement fund.
What page are you
It would be page 11 of 18. Fund 2101, motor vehicle license
is.
tax fund.
I've got 10.
It says intergovernmental grants or aid, non-federal
No, 67.
and non-state. That, where that is that the correct amount?
Correct.
Okay.
And that was which one, Nicole?
Which item?
The 67,000 was for which?
Cuyahoga County Road Maintenance for 2024.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions for Nicole regarding potential or not potential, but anticipated capital expenditure reimbursements? Okay. Just a quick comment from me. It's good to know that those funds are anticipated to be returned to the village in 2025, because of course, there are projects that are, as Mr. Spitznagel just reminded us of some, there are some projects that are, had been talked about in 2024 during the budget process, but of course, we approved an operational only budget and did not crunch out, what potential capital expenditures there might be. And of course, Mr. Spitznagel brought to light some road programs or some potential road items, but then there may be other potential capital expenditures for other departments. It could be vehicles, it could be other repairs and that kind of thing. So, and again, you know, the hour, we don't have a lot of time, and the infrastructure committee, fortunately, the infrastructure committee does meet next month and may be able to dig into some of these a little further. But I did want to get it on the table to just for one, get an update on where we potentially stand for the Nikki or the mayor on capital project application status, and then to talk a little bit about some of the potential capital projects for 2025. So Nicole, if you could just kind of give us an update, if you have an update on, we got the one information last week from the county on capital project application status.
Before we go to that, I did want to mention the 24,000 for the storm sewer. That actually did not come in until February, which is why it's not showing up on here. And as far as the update, I believe you had in your mailbox a notice from Joe.
Right, did everybody go to their mailbox?
Not since 3 o'clock, I was here earlier.
Oh, okay, then,
Okay.
apologize for that. Yeah, Joe sent us out a summary update. Does everybody have that with them? Okay. Do you have one, Ray, or do you want?
What's in your box?
I can get, Mr. Spitznagel sharing, I can get mine out of my locker.
Here, why don't you guys,
I might have an extra in the
Yeah.
office.
no, that's fine.
Here you go.
Well, Brian, yeah, take yours.
You want me to run and make a
No,
copy?
no,
of
I
it?
kind of got an idea, and as long as you have it, I had a little longer opportunity to look at it. Apologize for that, so.
Again, for the committee, this is a highlight. We believe it is a highlight.
Right.
We're not can't really dig into these projects, but we do have an infrastructure committee.
That kind of, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that does go through the individual ones, and it does talk about, it talked about the county road maintenance over in the Crick Road area. I think it has the amount that Brian, I think you might have asked about that, our part of that expenditure. I think,
This is the Northfield Road sidewalk.
oh, I gave you the wrong one.
Oh, here it is,
No.
infrastructure plan.
No, yeah, so you have the right one. Because I gave him mine. He's got.
Okay.
One, two. You want to look this one over too?
There's two of them. There's a separate, one's Northfield, Mr. Chairman, one's Northfield Road project. That's for
This one's
tonight's
really
committee of the
like
whole.
this is
And
like
then Joe
budget.
put a summary together. You have the summary, Ray?
I have this on.
Okay, and then Brian, you have your
Yes.
summary. Okay.
I actually don't have mine.
Do you want to grab yours? Then maybe you can share it at least, because I gave Ray mine.
No cost.
Run in and grab it.
And both sides of the road.
If not, we can make a
Originally, they were gonna do one. Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know where I was at if I didn't have it with me.
Yeah, so they changed, but if it's no cost to us.
How you doing, Jeff?
Mhm.
You're looking like Santa
He's
Claus
good.
with that beard. Have people said that? I think that's the longest I've seen you with it.
Yeah, I've had one for 25 years.
Have you ever had it that long?
Oh, yeah. Used to be black years ago.
Well, yeah, we won't talk about that. Oh, thank you, you got one too, Nikki.
I did see they had Santa at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we all have them now, so.
Okay. Okay, so, thank you, Mayor, for sharing this document, and just taking a quick peek at the, this summary update from our village engineer, Joe Gelati. I just went straight to page 2 of the cover sheet and just took a look at the 3 items that, if we did them all, would impact the village's budget, or we would have to pay some, and that is the Ryan and Sealy project. Net village expenditure, $249,000. Then the Fern Logan that Mr. Spitznagle brought to our attention, $92,000. And then Dunham Lane, net village expenditure, $47,000. And I added those all up, and that came to a total of $388,000. So we just want to put a asterisk by that. That, you know, should we be in the business of trying to achieve these projects in 2025, that is what the anticipated village expenditure would be, $388,000. Again, this does not include any other potential capital project, vehicles, or other, roofs or anything like that. So, Mayor, one of the reasons I was, when I talked to Nicole, was to talk about that is as we look at this item 3D, what would be, how would we prioritize which projects or which capital, let's just say, no, don't use the word projects, capital expenditures, how would we go about prioritizing those, similar to crafting a capital expenditure portion of the budget to be, that we would have to, in order to do what we need to do. So I wanted to kind of get that conversation started tonight, Mayor, and I'm saying it that way because I will wholeheartedly say I do not believe a one-off approach, one at a time, would be the way to go, but versus us sitting down as a council with the mayor, the finance team, the engineer, and kind of scoping out, and other departments, and scoping out what are the most essential pressing needs, along with not leaving potential money on the table because we have been funded, with some grants along the way. So just wanted to kind of get that conversation started there. Any comments or questions or concerns?
No, Mr. Chairman? I would just say, one piece of that to be looked at is when do we have to use those grants by?
Correct.
If they do not need to be used in '25, if we have that money sitting and waiting for us until '27, I think that's an important part of the picture that we need.
I concur with that assessment, Councilwoman Allen. We know that there are some funds, and Nicole has kind of already indicated there are some funds that have already come back, and there's already money in the capital, $400,000 in the capital budget. So there are some funds there, and as we have heard from our council tonight, our finance counsel, Mr. Stuzinski, the pay-as-you-go method is especially for road projects, would be the way to go. So the Ryan and Sealy project has already been delayed 1 year. That's already, because we did not have a partner per se on that project. But I agree, that is something that we do need to consider, what would be the time period in order to get that done. As well as the conditions, the deteriorating conditions. Roads typically do not get better as they age. Another factor I think we need to consider as well is some advice we were presented tonight from Mr. Stuzinski in taking a look at is there a possibility of paying down a little more on some previous projects. So all of that I think is part of our discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mayor.
I think another part of it, and Councilwoman Allen kind of touched on it too, is, and Matt touched on it too, we might hopefully going to start seeing some revenue the second half of this year, once those employees move into Cardinal Health. So I think that maybe we need to put a time, kind of maybe have Joe help us out with a little time thing, like which projects could wait if we do see that improvement with revenue. Where if it doesn't happen and we had to do them in '26, we're still okay. You know what I mean? Like, we'd like to do them now, but if they had to fall off the table because our projections don't come in where we're hoping, then it wouldn't affect anything. In other words, it is a matter of prioritizing, and that's probably something we can have Joe help us with here, and Rob, kind of help us prioritize these. That's one thing we didn't, Joe did a great job putting this summary together, and it shows the dollar amounts, so we really can see that. And we kind of know some of the priorities too. You mentioned, some like the parking lot maintenance, asphalt spot repair at TJ Young Park and the event center. Could that go another year? That's $75,000. That might be one we might say could go another year. Some of the striping, even though that's kind of a nice thing, just because it helps with visibility. I think that spray sealer, I think that's probably one of those things that has to be done. You don't want the product probably to get too old and not do it, then you might as well not do it maybe. So that's one we'd like to kind of get an opinion on, Joe. County road maintenance, we're receiving the 75. We probably are gonna spend that other 75. As far as, Ryan, Sealy, Fern and Logan, Dunham Lane, I think we're gonna need to have some more talk on that, and, as Councilwoman Allen said, find out what the old PWC note, not note, but grant, what the time frame is on that. So I think, Nikki, we had some discussions with Joe. The Northfield Road sidewalk, we will have to put some money out, but we'll be reimbursed for that.
Correct.
Correct, so that will happen, but we will get that back. So,
And, Mr. Mayor?
so I think that's our oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think I think my next move, is to have a little more discussion with Joe and Rob to kind of get a good feel, if we did have to push some of those projects into the following year, which ones could, because I think we kind of really focus on those road projects because they're only going to get worse and more expensive, even though there's a lot here too.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I'm good. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. For Nicole, how much money did you say? About $160,000 is still coming back to us from reimbursements from last year?
That was the total. We've
Total.
received a few of the payments.
Yeah.
I think there's a 74,000.
So the
How many
total's
we-
around 160,
Right.
because we passed the budget with a $300,000 deficit, so, and that money's not included in the budget that we passed.
Correct.
So, forward thinking, that's money that we have to use to offset that $300,000 deficit, that it won't impact the $300,000 deficit, I should say.
Nicole, could you also, I know you mentioned there's also already a certain amount of funds in the capital funds. Could you kind of share that number with all the council in addition to this $163,000 that we are anticipating being reimbursed in 2025?
The current balance is $406,800.38 in the capital fund.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Smith.
That money, though, there's an expense line in that capital, which shows a net in that fund of, I believe, $30,000 after that expense.
Let me look into that.
Let me try to find it real quickly.
Would that be on the budget, or are you,
It would be in the report that you just gave us under capital. I believe it's on page, let's see. If time's running short, I could find it later for you, or oh, you know what, I think it was, maybe it wasn't in that. It wasn't in that, it was in the financial worksheet budget for the funds report that you had sent us out. And I have it here for 2025. We show, oh, I'll let you see this because you can, I've got a couple things highlighted, but it shows for 25 unencumbered, undesignated of 30,103.
this is from December?
Oh, that was me.
So unless there was,
Are you looking at the totals?
yeah, I was looking at the totals there were
The 30,103, is that what you're,
the unencumbered, the rest of that money in that fund was encumbered. If you look at that, where I have it highlighted in green there on that left side,
right?
and then under the expenses, it has the expenses of, I forget what the number is, but
330?
yeah,
So the 250,000, that was engineering fees. Then we had motor vehicle expenses of 8307 for a total of 33307.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, according to that, at the end of last year, we had $30,000 in
That was from the budget numbers.
Yeah,
Yes, that was not the actual.
so where did the $400,000?
That was received last year, final budget. There were several different reasons, and I can get into that. a
So
little.
that money came after that report was
No,
obviously.
the 30,103 was the fund balance that was estimated in the budget from last year, the beginning fund balance,
Correct.
the ending fund balance, but that's not these aren't actual figures for the
Okay.
balances,
Okay,
yeah.
So with that said, then, the actual is the 400, just rounded off, 400,000. And then, we're looking at probably another 160, correct?
Correct.
and,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, none of that $400,000 is already encumbered?
In the balance, correct. What we did for our budget this year was, yes, that will be encumbered. For the car payments, for the engineering fees, for the,
So we don't have that money, it's not $400,000 to
Okay.
sit there for us to spend on other
Correct.
things. It's already encumbered on other things.
correct. Mhm.
Well, I guess that's one of the, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, one of the things for the
April.
next meeting, to kind of see
Right.
where we're really,
Exactly.
you know, Nikki and, that's an easy one for Nikki and Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
Mr.
Mayor Colgrove?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, we have some capital, of course. This is just capital on, and maybe I'm getting ahead of your agenda. This is just capital related to infrastructure, but there is some capital from the departments that we need to
Mhm.
look at, so it's a combination, but to me, I mean, none of it is great, but I think we're gonna have a better year, and the infrastructure plan doesn't look as bad, you know, especially since we were receiving that grant, you know, for Ryan and Sealy and stuff, that really half of that, you know, $250,000 from a $500,000 project. And remember, maybe it might come in less. Remember last year, we were very fortunate in our road projects, between Rob and Joe. They seemed to manage them well, and they came in quite a bit, so hopefully they'll come in less than more than what we've estimated, so.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick comment. The capital improvement budget that we approved included $330,307 in expenditures for 2025
For infrastructure.
for capital.
Oh,
For
capital,
capital.
okay.
I do believe, Mr. Chair, wasn't that for the sidewalk?
No, that would be engineering fees and our motor vehicle.
I thought part of that
Payment.
was for the sidewalk in anticipation of doing that, but obviously I'm wrong.
No, I didn't include any of that.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor
and the
Colgrove.
sidewalk is not, what did Joe just tell us? It's actually gonna take, did he sum it up in here? Well, yeah, I do have the sidewalk before. I thought we're not even sure if there is gonna be expenditures in, or maybe just some, because the project's really it's not gonna take place till 26. Let's look at what
Mr. Chairman, on Joe's note, the construction date of 2026 has been determined by ODOT for the Northfield Road sidewalk. For further details, please see my memo on this project dated 2/6/25. Net village expenditure is 0.
Yeah, and the last sentence, according to milestone document, construction is scheduled to begin in the summer of 2026. But I think he still talked, there might be some engineering fees will get reimbursed, but I think there might be something, correct, that we'll have to pay out. For some of it is that what we're passing in that preliminary legislation. But in the end, it's gonna
Mr. Chairman,
not cost us anything.
Councilwoman Allen?
I just want to be sure, so people don't believe, we're still waiting the official confirmation of that grant money for Ryan and Sealy. Keep our fingers crossed, but I don't want to go and have residents believe we are receiving that right now, just in case. We did come up very high, according to our village engineer, Joe Gelati, but until they're sending us a check.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Allen, and you know, and I know from in the past, that process, there's a spring official vote period, but then there's also a midsummer, early summer, July kind of issuance, when that does happen. So of course, these projects are for us to consider and take a good hard look at, but, you know, by around July would be, if it's successful, when those, you know, those approvals will actually come. So what I would like to do, because it's already 7:10 p.m., Mr. Spitznagle, of course, next month, March 11th, would be our infrastructure committee meeting, and of course, our village engineer typically is there, and so we've had a lot that we've touched on tonight, and then actually we're looking forward to a good infrastructure committee meeting and maybe flesh out more of this along with other committee of the whole meetings. So I do want to move this agenda forward and try to close it out. Mayor, the last item on the agenda, we were looking for a finance department update, and basically what Nicole and I talked about, and if we may be able to do this in the COW if we want. This was just to kind of give us and kind of tell us how things are going in the finance office. We've seen the reports, but as well as, you know, we know there's audits and things going on, but Nicole, if you can just kind of give us
Okay, I can give a brief summary. As far as our audit, it is on hold until we get the bank reconciliation back. And I did hear from the people that are doing our bank reconciliation, noting that they are fully reconciled through October 22, and they're currently reviewing a few items that will let them make some additional significant progress with the reconciliation going forward. So they are done through October 22. So when that item is complete, the audit will continue. As far as the audit findings, we are about I would say about 75% of what they had asked us to get done and for the non-compliance issues. I do have a list, so if anybody is interested, they can come to my office. I can give you a quick summary of where we're at. We still have a lot of items to do. We've implemented quite a few procedures and processes we're still working with as far as purchase orders, as far as credit cards. We were able to reduce the credit card expenditures from when Melissa started doing them. They were $60,000. The last one was $1,800. We've reduced those purchases off of there in order to make them more and easily identifiable in our books. We've worked with all of our department heads on moving procedures forward. We've done quite a bit. We still have some work to do. Some of the processes we didn't feel were quite successful, and some of the things that we've done. So we're still working. I think it's a constant looking at how things are going, how things are flowing, but I'm pretty happy with, we are up to date from everything that we've done in 2023, 2024. We are current, so that's big for us.
Woo-hoo.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Nicole? If not, we are going to, at 7:14 p.m., we are going to receive a motion to adjourn this Finance Committee meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Spitznagle.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting at 7:14.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Spitznagle, second by Mr. Nielsen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Nielsen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kanzoni?
Yes.
Councilwoman Allen?
Yes.
Councilman Spitznagle?
Yes.
Councilman Whedon?
Yes. Meeting adjourned at 7:14 p.m.
We do have another link, right?
Yes. Let me shut this
Right,
down.
right, just grabs. Anybody watching, we do have another link
That's fine.
for the COW meeting, so this meeting will end on the finance link, and then we'll start, just so you don't think, you just have to go back to the website and click on it. Thank you.
Good.
That's good, just want to let them know that we're not for the night.